Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Pagani Design PD-1727 V1. This watch is available from Pagani Design Global AliExpress store on AliExpress for €103. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in this familiar black cardboard Pagani Design watch box. The watch sits on a piece of foam inside a foam cutout panel in the base, as one would expect. Although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to use this basic cardboard style of watch box, bearing in mind it's a low tier price point piece at only €103. With the watch, one gets this owner's instruction manual. Although basic, it does suffice in detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. Clear, concise diagrams, the instructions are in English, and it also details the terms and conditions of the 12-month international guarantee. One also gets this plastic guarantee card, and as usual the reverse isn't filled in with the date, reference number or the dealer's stamp. However, it is covered by the usual 12-month international guarantee. And one also gets this Pagani Design branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth irrespective of the price point of a piece. And lastly, one also gets this plastic Pagani Design tag. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Pagani Design PD-1727 V1. I've previously reviewed the V2 version and I'll explain the difference. This V1 has black pushers and also a black crown. The V2 is the same watch, the only difference is it has silver pushers and a silver crown respectively. So originally when the Pagani Design factory showed me the design for this white 1727 V1, I suggested they change the colour of the pushers and the crown from black to silver respectively, and they liked this idea, so they decided to produce both the V1 and the V2 respectively, and one can choose either black or silver pushers depending on one's own personal preference. So the watch is clearly an homage to the Rolex Daytona, very similar proportions to the Daytona. We have a 40mm case diameter. We have a 48mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 12mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the flip lock clasp. Now if you look at the flip lock clasp, you can see it is signed to high standard with Pagani Design's logo engraved. Beautiful brushed satin finish to the outer section of the body of the clasp, which contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the centre section, which complements the mirror polished flanks to the body of the clasp. Nice positive action to the flip lock, and I'll show you the interior. As you can see, solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, matte brushed satin finish to the centre section of the body, which contrasts with the mirror polished flanks, edges and underside. Well executed, and I like to see the finishing is done very well, no sharp edges, no burrs. It also has a 5mm EasyLink style extension, as you can see, and the EasyLink style extension gives one 5mm of on-the-fly adjustment, so it snaps in and out of the body of the clasp with a nice positive click, very well executed. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal. Now the negative of the flat sapphire crystal is there is no AR coating on the underside. And when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see there is a lot of glare and highly reflective nature due to the mirror polished applied indices and also the mirror polished baton hands. Now on the 1644, which is very similar with a white dial, it has silver applied indices and silver baton hands. But on this 1727, both the V1 and the V2 respectively, the hands and the applied indices are anodized black. So although they have a metallic mirror polish finish to them, they are anodized black, and therefore the black hands and the black indices contrast better with the matte white dial. So the legibility has improved. On the 1727 with the white dial, the legibility is better due to the contrast of the black indices and black hands versus the poor legibility of the 1644, which has a black ceramic bezel insert, because the hands are silver and therefore more shiny and reflective. So the symmetry of the dial is good. It's a good homage to the Daytona dial layout, and between the 4 and 5 o'clock indices on the dial we have a date complication. White date will contrast very well with the black Arabic numerals. So really this piece would benefit from clear AR coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal. But having said that, the flat sapphire crystal is very aesthetically pleasing because it does have a bevel which projects above the top edge of the stainless steel bezel, and I like the way that catches the light. With regards to the stainless steel bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel engraved with Arabic numerals, and also has the tachymeter scale engraved and infilled with black paint to a very high standard, flawless mirror polishing to the stainless steel bezel, and they really deserve credit because the engraving and painting of the tachymeter scale is absolutely flawless. It really is excellent. So with regards to the pushers and the crown, they all provide an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters water resistance. The crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, but it is black PVD coated, as you can see. The cap is well executed. We have a glossy Pagani design shield emblem on it. So let's test the screw down crown execution. Absolutely silky smooth. It's something that Pagani design do very well. Screw down crowns consistently on the 1664, the 1644 and this 1727 respectively, all their Daytona Homages. They all have silky smooth screw down crowns which provide an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the date window between 4 and 5 o'clock, you can see rotating the crown clockwise activates the quick set complication. It's one of my favourite aspects of the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. It's got a nice positive quick set date. One can feel each day of the month clicking over with a nice positive click. Putting it out to the second click position is the time setting position, and if you look at the second subdial at 6 o'clock, you can see the movement has hacking. I've now hacked the movement so one can set the time precisely to the second. So we're now in the time setting position, absolutely silky smooth, no resistance, no friction to the gearing. In the VK63 Mecha Quartz, it's an absolute pleasure to set the time, very smooth. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and if you look at the subdial at 6, the second subdial, you can see it now begins to tick around the subdial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup, this is outstanding, 10 out of 10 screw down crown execution. It feels silky smooth, no friction whatsoever, so that's an indication that the interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube are very good. The threads are meshing very well, so the screw down crown really is outstanding. So let's test the chronograph complication and the screw down pushers. Silky smooth thread action to the top pusher. Silky smooth thread action to the bottom pusher, no friction whatsoever. They really do feel quite similar to the Rolex Daytona screw down pushers, and I've previously reviewed a Rolex Daytona which is a €20,000 piece, and I can tell you that there's no discernible difference in terms of the smoothness of the thread action on a Rolex Daytona and this 1727 which is an homage to it. Pressing the top pusher activates the chronograph complication. Nice firm resistance to the spring-loaded action of the top pusher. One has to give it a good hard push, but I like that firm spring-loaded action because it's reassuring. It means that it's going to last for a good length of time. So as you can see, the chronograph hand begins to tick around the dial. Pushing the top pusher once again stops the chronograph hand, and pushing the lower pusher will cause the chronograph hand to fly back to the 12 o'clock index on the dial. Again, nice positive click. I like the firm resistance to the pusher. It's got a really firm spring-loaded action, so it feels solid and reliable. And the alignment of the chronograph hand aligns correctly with the 12 o'clock index on the dial. So this is something I really like about the VK63 Mecha Quartz. It's reliable, accurate. The alignment is always bang on 12 o'clock. It's the correct choice of movement. So let's test screwing them back down. The top pusher screws down, no friction whatsoever, silky smooth. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the collar on the pusher and the pusher tube. And again with the lower pusher, absolutely silky smooth. This is fantastic screw down pusher execution. 100 meters of hermetic seal is perfectly acceptable for a chronograph piece. So I'll show you the case back because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. Now on the 1664, it has a starfish engraved to the case back, which doesn't make any sense. The starfish would suit a dive piece, but it's not relative to a chronograph piece, which isn't a dive watch. On the 1644, they engraved the Pagani design shield and also the reference number 1644, and that does make sense. It does fit the aesthetics of the piece. I like the 1644 with the shield. This is my favourite of the three case backs, the sterile centre section, which is more like a Tudor or Rolex case back, and they've mirror polished the circumference and engraved the specification to a high standard. Flawless mirror polishing, nice milled slots with no burrs or sharp edges. Now the benefit of having a sterile centre section, which is concentric CNC lathe tool machining, is that it sits perfectly flat and smooth against the wrist. Sometimes with engraved centre sections on case backs, they feel irritant to the skin. They can rub against the wrist if the engraving is sharp. So I prefer sterile centre sections as per this one because it's perfectly flat and smooth. And as you can see, looking at the side profile, it's a very low profile screw down case back, and it still provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres. And I really like it. I think that this is an enhancement over the 1664 Starfish caseback and the 1644 Shield caseback. I think the ultimate is the 1727. It's something I really like about it. The solid end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece, well machined, no sharp edges, no burrs, no play in the end links. And the underside to the case is brush satin finish to a very high standard, so the finishing to the head of the piece and the case back is outstanding. I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, I've simply taken it out of the watch box, and as you can see it fits my 8-inch wrist with no difficulty whatsoever. As you'll know from my previous reviews, I like to size my bracelets loose using the correct sizing method. One should always be able to slide an index finger underneath the clasp and bracelet at all times. This allows for wrist expansion in warmer weather or when one is active. So correct fit, and as you can see, no problems whatsoever, plenty of spare length. So this would actually fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist, and it fits my wrist to perfection. The proportions of this piece are perfection personified. 40mm head of the piece is perfectly balanced by a 20mm lug width. The bracelet has the correct taper, 20mm down to 16mm at the flip lock clasp. Very well balanced piece, it's only 143 grams. Now as you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider circa 150 grams to be the sweet spot for a 40mm head of the piece on a solid bracelet. At 143, it's just below the sweet spot of 150. It gives a nice feeling of quality and wrist presence and heft, but without feeling top heavy. It's very well balanced. The other thing I really like is they have got the lug to lug measurement perfect. 48mm is the sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. 48mm really is the perfect lug-to-lug measurement. So 40 by 48 is correct. The other thing I really like about it is its relatively low profile at only 12mm, and that's the benefit of this being a VK63 Mecha Quartz powered piece. Mecha Quartz movements are thinner than manual wind or automatic movements with a rotor, and it's an advantage because it means they don't need a thick case to house the Mecha Quartz movement. 12mm means that this is easily going to slip underneath a shirt cuff, and therefore if you wear business shirts it's an ideal daily wear piece. So the proportions are perfection. 48mm lug to lug, wraps around the wrist very well, and it just feels incredibly well balanced. It actually feels weightless on wrist, and I really like it. The centre links are mirror polished, which complement the centre section of the flip lock clasp being mirror polished. They also complement the mirror polished top edges of the lugs and the mirror polished flanks to the case and the mirror polished bezel. So the mirror polishing is done to a high standard throughout. It's a very shiny piece and it is just absolutely gorgeous to look at. The only thing it really needs is clear AR coating on the underside of the flat sapphire crystal, and Pagani Design have just introduced AR coating on their Milgauss, Air King and Explorer homages, and it's something I would like to see them introduce on their Daytona homages, the 1644, 1664 and this 1727 respectively. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it charges up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it hasn't disappointed. This is the kind of performance one would expect. It's clearly C3 luminova rather than C3 superluminova, and initially it does appear to glow brightly, although however it won't last as long as C3 superluminova. I would like to see Pagani Design upgrade to using C3 superluminova or alternatively BGW9 superluminova. because that would give better performance. It would glow initially brighter and it would also glow for a longer length of time. But however, on the baton hands and the applied indices, they have got a good colour match between the applied indices and also the hands. So the green tone matches very well, the symmetry is good. And one of the benefits of sighting the date complication between 4 and 5 o'clock is it retains the symmetry of the dial. The 9, 6 and 3 subdials are symmetrical and also retains the symmetry of the applied indices all the way round. We have the same size of indices at each of the 12-hour markers. So on the baton hands it's beginning to fade now, but however on the indices it's continuing to glow to a reasonable standard. So I describe the C3 Luminova as being okay performance, however there is room for improvement. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll all be familiar with the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. It's used in several Pagani design Daytona Homages, the 1664, 1644 and this 1727 respectively. It's a reliable, well-proven Mecha Quartz movement made in Japan, 2-year battery life. Now the 2-year battery life is based upon you using the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. However, in reality you're not going to be using the chronograph complication for anything like 60 minutes per day, and therefore it's nothing unusual for a VK63 battery to last for 3 to 4 years, and that is very good battery life. It has hacking, as I've demonstrated. When one pulls out the crown to the second click position, the time setting position, one can hack the movement and stop the second hand dead on the 6 o'clock subdial. So hacking is useful complication. Also has a quick set date complication, as I've demonstrated, so it's very quick to set the date. The stated accuracy of the VK63 is plus or minus 20 seconds per month. So I want you to consider that for a second. That isn't plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week, that is per month. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day. So very accurate movement, very reliable, well proven, and I think it's the correct choice. I actually prefer the VK63 to using a mechanical movement such as the Seagull ST1901, for example, which would be the credible alternative as used by San Martin if you would like manual wind movements, but I personally prefer the VK63. It's a no-nonsense movement because potentially you could buy this watch and wear it for 3 to 4 years before you need to change the battery, and it will maintain plus or minus 20 seconds per month, which is incredible accuracy, far more accurate than a Seagull ST1901, for example. So no negatives to the movement whatsoever. I like the fact it has hacking, I like the quick set complication, and of course better than plus or minus 1 second per day is outstanding. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So €103 is the price point of this piece. Really, to evaluate it, one needs to study the quality of the finishing to the head of the piece, including the bezel and the case back. The mirror polishing to the flanks of the case is absolutely outstanding. No sharp edges to it. The mirror polishing on the tops of the lugs, the bezel, and also the finishing on the case back are all 10 out of 10. Some of the best quality finishing I have seen from Pagani design. The build's quality control and finishing of the flip block clasp is also good. They've improved the flip block clasp used. This is better finished and the build's quality overall is better than on the 1644. So I really like the execution of it. The flip block works very well, and also there's less play in the hinge pins on this 1727, and also even the EasyLink extension on some Pagani design watches such as the 1661 and 1662, for example. The EasyLink extension can be difficult to deploy, and I will add that to the 1692 as well. They can be very stiff, they can be very difficult to deploy. But on this 1727 it feels more like a Rolex EasyLink because it snaps in and out of the clasp with a nice positive click, but it doesn't require excessive force to deploy it. One can easily push it out, it clicks out, and it also snaps back in. Nice loud audible click, and they have improved the tolerances. This 1727 EasyLink style extension is definitely better executed than on the 1644, for example, and it snaps shut with a nice positive click and a nice positive secondary click. So I would say that this 1727 clasp is better done than on the 1644. So build quality control, finishing are all very good. Now the bracelet. It has some stiff links in it. Now this is ironic because usually Pagani design watches, the bracelets are the negative and they have lots of play. They're very sloppy. There's lots of play with the 1.6mm screw pins going through the links. This does have some play as one would expect, but however it also has some links which are tight and they kink. So too much friction. So it's neither one thing nor the other. We've got some tight links and some links that are too loose rather than being consistent, but however one has to expect some cost-cutting measures with regards to the build quality. I would describe the bracelet as okay, however there is room for improvement, but on a positive note there's no sharp edges, no burrs, which is a negative of other watches they make, such as the 1701 V3 Speedmaster Homage. That does have sharp edges on the underside of the centre links and also on the flanks of the bracelet. The mirror polishing to the flanks is flawless, mirror polishing to the centre section is flawless, and there's a beautiful lustre to the brushed satin finish outer link. So the bracelet is finished to a good standard, although it does have some stiff links in it and then some slack links. I'll just check the other side for comparison. On the other side, the links aren't tight. There's no stiff links kinking, but however, we do have some play in the screw pins. The end links are a good tight fit to the case, so we've got no play whatsoever there. So they're well finished. So really, it's just the bracelet needs some improvements with the consistency of the screw pins going through to get the fits better. Because if you look on this side, it kinks. Just those first three links are stiff. But on the other links, they articulate better, they're smoother. So the bracelet is the weak point of this watch. Clasp is a strong point, head of the piece is flawless. Screw down crown, screw down pushers are absolutely 10 out of 10. So overall, yes, there are some cost-cutting areas. For example, the lack of AR coating, the use of C3 Luminova rather than Super Luminova. Bracelet is another cost-cutting measure, but the finishing to the head of the piece is excellent. And as you know from my previous reviews, I like this watch, the V2 version, so much I added it to my own personal collection, so that really is the highest compliment I can pay a watch. So yes, I'm going to declare it excellent quality, and yes, I'm going to declare it excellent value at €103. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for your consideration, and I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Pagani design PD-1727 V1. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.